Few Australian birds are as iconic as the mighty magpie. If you were to ask any Australian to name a backyard bird, the magpie would certainly come to mind. Almost every Aussie can tell tales of interactions with these fascinating feathered friends, but not every interaction is positive. In fact, I have some stories of my own. Watch to the end to find out. The negative experiences have given magpies a reputation for being Australia's most ruthless and aggressive bird. Well, second most. But do they really deserve such a reputation? In this video, we'll find out. But before we get into all the soupy stuff, let's get down to basics. The Australian magpie, also known as hang on a second.
Jimmerhina.
Also known as Jimmerhina tabition, or even Cracticus tabition, is a small to medium-sized bird, similar to a crow. They are classified as a type of butcherbird, yet they should not be confused with the pied butcherbird, which is similar to magpies, but smaller. What differs them from crows is their colour composition. Their feathers are black and white, which you may think isn't a very good camouflage, and you'd be correct. But it looks cool, and their conservation status is least concern, so I'm okay with it. Their colours are so iconic, magpies are used as a moniker for many sports teams across the world, with black and white being jersey colours. This includes a certain football club whose fan base are a bunch of toothless degenerates. Yes, I'm still salty about 2022. You, Jamie Elliott. The patterns of their plumage differ, depending on which region they live in. In the cooler regions of the country, their back and rump could be completely white. On the contrary, if they live in warm regions such as Queensland and the outer outback, they are black. In order to make the distinction between male and female magpies, you must look at the feathers on the shoulders, nape, and upper tail. In these areas, the feathers for males are white, whereas the females' feathers are grey. Magpies have a wedged, sharp beak, which is another reason why people are terrified of them. Their beaks are bluish grey with an ebony tip. Magpies have tall dark legs with 4 toes. 3 of them face forward, while the 4th is backwards. Magpies measure in at 35 to 45 centimetres with a wingspan of between 65 to 85 centimetres. They weigh 220 to 350 grams, unless you feed them mincemeat, cheese, bread, meth, and macas like an idiot. More on that later. As we know, the magpie's home is the land down under. It is called the Australian magpie after all, but which parts of Australia do they specifically reside in, and which climate do they prefer? Australian magpies reside throughout most of the Australian continent. They've even been spotted as far away as New Zealand and southern New Guinea. But not all magpies are the same, and not all of Australia is inhabited by magpies. Specifically, in accordance to this map, the largest swathes of land that magpies do not inhabit are located in the outback. This could be due to the arid and sparsely populated nature of the outback not being very hospitable to magpies. The pendulum also swings the other way, with the most surprising discovery being the lack of magpies in the top end and the tip of the Cape York Peninsula. Perhaps the jungle is too dense, or could it be due to a human factor? According to this map, they have a significantly larger presence in human population centres in comparison to remote regions of Australia. Even in a relatively small town like Hervey Bay, the magpie population is substantially higher than in remote areas. This could be perhaps due to more people living in these areas, therefore the frequency of magpie sightings increasing. Or is there another factor at play? Well, in order to properly understand the true reasons, we shall look at their preferred biome. Magpies are best suited to the more moderate regions of Australia. They like lightly wooded grasslands with a reliable source of water, such as a creek or a river. Magpies appear to be one of the few non-human beneficiaries of land clearing. In fact, they have adapted exceedingly well to the urbanised landscapes of the Australian capitals. They love parks, school grounds, and backyard lawns, which is super convenient for the humans in those areas, as any Australian can attest to. So, why do they like these areas? Well, grasslands are perfect because their prey likes to live in the grass and below the ground. They are omnivorous and have an interchangeable diet based on the seasons. During summer, their diet comprises of invertebrates such as worms, beetles, flies, snails, and leather jackets. They play a vital role in pest management and control, retaining Australia's environmental diversity. Well, as much of it as they can. In the winter, they take a more vegetarian route, snacking on seeds, berries, and wild fruits. But magpies are not fussy eaters. They won't pass up any opportunity for a feed, which is why they are susceptible to being fed by humans. But enough about that for now. Let's get back to why they prefer living where they do. Lakes and rivers provide a source of water where they can drink, clean themselves, and cool off. Finally, tall trees provide the ideal place for magpies to nest and gather materials for nesting. Speaking of nesting, it's time to discuss the life cycle. One night, Daddy Magpie was sitting in his $500 a week apartment, looking through Tinder. Constantly, he was swiping left. While there were plenty of magpies out there, none of them had that specific grey tint he was looking for. He felt unsatisfied. Suddenly, he finds her, Mummy Magpie. She was beautiful. She had thin, sexy legs, beautiful eyes, glossy feathers, and her beak was to die for. He swiped right, something he hadn't done in a long time. The more hours that flew by, the more nervous he got. But suddenly, he received the news he was looking for. She matched with him too! So they started chatting, or at least that's how I think it works. I don't use this stupid shit. They set up a date and time to meet, and when they finally met, he discovered that the fucking bitch catfished him, the stupid cat. Okay, jokes aside, this isn't how it really works. Trust me, I know how nature works. Daddy Magpie sent a bunch of dick pics beforehand. Magpies have a relatively long breeding season compared to other birds. Depending on where in Australia they live, their breeding season will commence between June and September. In warmer climates, the season begins as early as June, whereas in colder climates, it'll commence in August and September. As many of you may know, magpies are a territorial bunch. Groups of magpies from neighbouring territories will clash for land and food. So how do they resolve their differences? Rap battle! Well, not quite. They'll participate in group song battles between the territories, but they won't count out the possibility of using a more physical means to assert their position. When they turn 2 years old, the more dominant male magpies will do the deed with their female counterparts. Once that has been completed, the female will go off on her own into a tree and begin to build the nest. She is responsible for everything, from choosing the location, to building the nest, gathering the materials, and incubating. You name it, the female does it. Imagine The Block, but only with women. The male doesn't help one bit. Sexist pig. Okay, well sometimes he feeds her and is forced to defend the territory. So maybe the male has his reasons for not being there all the time. But he can still be unreliable, and this leads to the females sometimes being unsuccessful in incubating the eggs. Usually the female will build the nest approximately 15 meters off the ground in a tree fork. The most common tree they will nest in is the eucalyptus if possible. Like most bird nests, it is bowl-shaped, consisting of mostly leaves, sticks, twigs, and wires. The closer a magpie is to an urban area or a human hotspot, the more likely they are to use synthetic materials in their nest. The interior of the nest is lined with soft materials such as grass and fur for obvious reasons. I mean, when you were a kid, did you sit butt naked on a bunch of twigs and other sharp objects? No. So why would you expect magpies to do the same? Once the female has completed the nest, she will lay a clutch of between 1 to 6 eggs, which she will incubate for approximately 3 weeks, or until the chicks hatch. This is what happens inside the eggs. If you watched my previous video on masked lapwings, also known as plovers, I briefly explained how an embryo grows into a chick. This process may differ from bird to bird, but here is what generally occurs. The egg starts as a cell. The growth is kick-started by the female's hormonal changes. First, the yolk is created as the cell increases in size. Then, the egg will travel through the mouth of the oviduct, where it will be fertilized if the male successfully copulated with the female. Whether or not the egg is fertilized, it will still continue down the oviduct, where the albumin and membrane are created. The mass is hydrated and shaped, and the shell is formed around the outside layers. If the egg has been fertilized, the development of the chick will commence. A pointed, thickened layer of cells will appear at the tail end of the embryo, which form the head and the backbone. After this, the vital organs and cardiovascular systems are developed. The limbs and beak are also formed. Finally, the claws and the feathers grow. From insemination to hatching, this process takes roughly 3 weeks for magpies. For the first month of a magpie's life, they are completely dependent on the parents for warmth, protection, and sustenance. After this period, you may be walking around your backyard like me, and you find a magpie fledgling on the ground. This is perfectly normal. Unless it looks super young or unhealthy, then you may want to contact your local vet clinic or wildlife carer. The magpie's parents kick the chicks out of the nest to learn how to fend for themselves. They will learn how to hide, forage for food, and prepare their wings for flight. This may seem like a heartless parenting method, but the parents will still look out for their chicks. It's not like they hate their chicks and are sending them to boarding school or anything like that. But that all changes after 2 years, when the parents force their offspring to move to another territory so they can breed with other magpies. Hear that, 30-year-old basement dwellers? You guys have it easy. I hate my life. To be fair, magpies don't have to deal with a fucked rental and housing market. Once the fledglings have found their own territory, they will continue the cycle of life, breeding with other magpies and living off the land until they pass away at the ripe old age of 25 years old. Some magpies have been observed living up to 30 years. Now, we will uncover what they do for those 25 to 30 years of their life in their free time. By avian standards, magpies are quite intelligent. For the duration of the year, they will live in their own territory with a small group of up to 5 other maggies. They will remain tame around humans, sharing spaces such as parks and yards with them. They even interact with people in positive ways, such as allowing them to be fed, pat, or they may even climb onto people. Magpies can recognize faces of humans, going so far as to hold personal grudges against people they don't trust. During the hatchling phase of the breeding season, magpies will become aggressive. Or that's what the magpie haters will tell you. Only a small percentage of magpies that are watching will actually swoop. It's a perfect example of how one dickhead can ruin the reputation of an entire species. But this can still be problematic for people due to their persistence. They will chase their victims up to 100 meters away from the nest, targeting specific people or animals. They will screech and clap their beaks while swooping, as if they weren't intimidating enough. The pesky cyclist is an animal species that magpies will relentlessly attack, and personally, I completely get why. Most of the time, it's the male that will do the swooping, but the female will still join in. Rarely will they actually make contact with you when they swoop, but if they do, they can draw blood. This might seem bad, but if you can gain their trust, they won't attack you. They may still not be welcoming towards you when you enter their territory, but they'll only do a warning swoop or two at most. Magpies are surprisingly playful. They will roll around in the leaves, make many different noises, and even play with domestic house pets like dogs and cats. They are capable of conveying many different emotions. Most notably, they will bow down and swish their tails as a sign of submission to the dominant males. Australian magpies can create a wide variety of noises in different circumstances. They can mimic up to 35 different bird species, and have even been seen imitating man-made objects such as fire truck alarms. The most iconic noise they make is the warble. When they are alone, they will sing a fluty song. There is a reason they are regarded as one of Australia's best songbirds. The song is just so melodious, beautiful, peaceful. This warbling isn't designed to carry long distances like other magpie noises. This could potentially be a noise they make when bored, but that's just speculation on my end. They have been recorded to warble on their own for up to 70 minutes. Another noise they like to make, this time as a group, is caroling. This is done as a warning to any foreigners to back away from their territory. One magpie will initiate the carol, then gradually, the rest join in. They will consistently carol for a short period of time at dawn and dusk. They can convey a situation of danger, but not in the way you might think. Unlike a species, such as the alpaca, that have a different specific sound when they spot potential dangers, magpies will communicate a threat through the frequency of its calls. As a threat gets closer, the frequency will increase. This method is surprisingly easy for animals to recognize, as this is trusted by other bird species. Furthermore, magpies can actually tell if the source of the sound is reliable. They will simply ignore the unreliable calls. When magpies swoop, they make a screeching sound in order to be more intimidating, which works. It works quite well. The final distinct sound that magpies make are used by the chicks. They will emit a short, loud begging call to their parents when they return to the nest so they can be fed. It's like a more annoying version of Are We There Yet? Here's a fun little fact about magpies. There's actually quite a difference between how males and females communicate. The females will be considerably louder and chattier than the males. So to any of the guys out there that are married to chatterboxes, you aren't alone. So, it's a nice sunny day, and you're on your daily walk/cycle to work. But there's just one slight problem. You live in a no-through road and it's magpie season. One of them is particularly nasty. I don't know what you did to it. Maybe you tipped over its favourite bird bath or something and refused to refill it. The point is, it's mad. What do? Well, avoiding the area isn't an option since you need money to survive. Travelling in a group would help, but you have no friends like in the last video. What then? You wait like the coward you are. Slowly start. Wait, there's still hope. You can wear sunglasses, carry an umbrella, wear a hat, or if you're a cyclist, get off the fucking road. Just kidding. Put weird spiky things on top of your helmet. Then the magpie will gawk in shock and awe at how hideously bad your taste in fashion is. But I'd say the best thing you can do truly to avoid swooping in the long term is to gain the bird's trust. Don't empty that bird bath, unless you're refilling it of course. Remain calm and act as unthreateningly as possible. You can even feed them. However, don't do this. Many people do, but they do it without properly doing their research as to how it affects the magpie. If you do choose to feed magpies, make sure not to feed them the following: mincemeat, cheese, dog biscuits, and bread. This is because they lack the nutrients magpies require to survive and grow. Calcium in particular is crucial for magpie chicks. Observations have shown that magpies that were consistently fed these foodstuffs had chicks with weaker and disfigured bones. Make sure you do your homework as to what wild animals eat in the wild before feeding them. Mealworms are a possibility for feeding magpies, but even then, don't feed them so often because they may become overly reliant on you for food, which could be detrimental if you are forced to move for any reason. Just don't feed them. Only do it if there is a good reason. While many people may just see birds like magpies or plovers as a nuisance, it's important to understand the role they play in our society and the ecosystem at large. Life is never as simple as people make it out to be. While some magpies may be viciously protective of their young, swooping everything and anything in the way, most magpies are intelligent, compassionate creatures who sing beautiful songs and form unbreakable bonds with humans and animals alike. Magpies are truly Australia's most incredible avian. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please press the like button, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget to press the notification bell. As I said earlier in the video, I had some stories of my experiences with magpies as a kid. So here we go. I might go a bit off the cuff here. When I was a kid, I lived in Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland if any non-Aussies are watching. Basically, I went down to the park with my parents and little sister. We were on bikes when, all of a sudden, I felt something brush up against my cheek. Turns out a magpie had swooped on me and drew a bit of blood. At the time, I thought the magpie had completely pierced my cheek. But that must have just been my brain over-exaggerating things at the time, as most kids are good at doing. That's just, you know, the nature of children's brains, I guess. At least looking back on my brain when I was a kid. Another time I had a bad run-in with magpies as a kid was when we moved to Woodgate. I didn't really film much of the park in my first ever video because I didn't want to look like a pedophile. But at the park, there's a public toilet. You know how we were walking along the path? At the start of that path, there's like a right turn, and that's kind of where it is. It's mostly made of bricks and grout and all that sort of stuff. One day I was with my sister riding either a bike or a scooter, I think it was a scooter, when all of a sudden this little shit of a magpie starts getting super aggressive. We had to take shelter in the public toilets. What made it worse was this magpie would not leave us alone. It was staring at us, probably. Honestly, it was out of my line of sight, but I know it was up in a tree somewhere close by. This was back in the days when having a mobile phone was a luxury, and parents were still reluctant to give children their own phones. So we were stuck there all morning, scared shitless. When we did finally decide to make a run for it, the bastard almost nicked me. And those are the two experiences that I remember. Do you have any personal experiences with magpies? Make sure to let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
We are the old dark navy blues. Forever they know how to play the game. Side by side they stick together to uphold them. We're the team that never lets you down. We're the only team old Carlton knows. We're Magpie's name. See the barricades are shouting as all barricades shout.